I will.
Yeah, great,
Correct.
thanks.
You're welcome. And just as a reminder for everyone, this webinar is being recorded. So, and it will be on our YouTube channel later today or tomorrow, depending on how long it takes to edit. So we'll give it just a couple more minutes. Patrick Fuller is our first speaker, and he's not on quite yet. He'll be there soon. Hi, everyone who's just joined. We'll be getting started in just a minute. And Patrick, were you able to get in? I just saw your email. You're here. Okay, sorry about that. Well, it sounds like your audio is it's going in and out a little bit.
Okay, let me try to work on that.
Oh, that's better. That was better. Okay, we'll start in just a couple minutes. We've still got people coming in. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Just to let everyone know, the webinar is being recorded. If you have questions, you're going to put them in the chat, and we will be monitoring those for questions. We'll do most of the questions at the end of the presentations. Patrick Fuller, the Emergency Management Director for Charlotte County, he's our first speaker. We'll be doing his Q&A directly after his presentation. So we'll start here in just a minute. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. People will kind of trickle in. I have some introduction slides to do. So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our 2023 Business Hurricane Season Preparedness webinar. I want to say a quick thank you to all of our guest speakers. We're really excited to have Patrick Fuller from Emergency Management presenting, Brian Beard from SBA, Deborah Parker from FEMA. We also have Liz Scott from CareerSource Southwest Florida, Dorian from FGCU's Small Business Development Center, and Angie Matheson from United Way. All right, I'm your host, Amanda Benton. I am the Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator for Charlotte County Economic Development. My email address is up there at the top. Just to let everyone know, this webinar is being recorded. Mutes and videos are muted right now. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. So just real quick, we'll be doing the Q&A at the end of all the presentations, except for Patrick Fuller. We are going to do his Q&A directly following his presentation. I want to give you just a couple of our hurricane season preparedness resources. If you go to our website, which is clearedfortakeoff.com, you'll see we have a business support section menu here. If you click on, we have one specifically for Hurricane Ian, but we also have some hurricane season preparedness links. So those are going to be things like a link to floridadisaster.org. We have a webinar from last season, but we'll be putting this one up there once we're done. There's also a Charlotte County disaster guide and Charlotte County evacuation zone information. In addition to making sure you're following local government social media, we also post and share a lot of the same updates on our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Our phone number is down here at the bottom. That's our email address. And of course, our website is clearedfortakeoff.com. I want to thank my co-host, Kay Tracy. She is my colleague here at Charlotte County Economic Development. She's our business recruitment manager. I also want to thank Bob White, the Charlotte County Chamber Executive Director, for helping do introductions, and Doug Izzo, the Englewood Chamber Executive Director. So with that, our first speaker is going to be Patrick Fuller, and Doug is going to go ahead and do the introduction.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So, Patrick Fuller is the Emergency Management Director for Charlotte County Emergency Management, and he began his career in emergency management with the Florida Division of Emergency Management back in 2009. During that time, Patrick held several positions with the FDEM Response Bureau, finishing his time there as a Region 6 coordinator, which serves as a direct liaison to local governments of Southwest Florida for emergency management. In June 2017, Patrick accepted the position of Emergency Management Coordinator with Charlotte County Emergency Management. During the response to Hurricane Irma that same year, Patrick managed the operations section of Charlotte County Emergency Management, or Charlotte County Emergency Operations Center. Patrick has been a director of Charlotte County Emergency Management since September of 2019 and oversees the county's efforts to prepare for, respond to, recovery from, and mitigate against natural and man-made disasters. And finally, Patrick is a graduate of Florida State University and retired from the United States Marine Corps in April 2022 with nearly 24 years of combined active duty and reserve service. So thank you, Patrick, for your service.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Amanda. I appreciate you guys having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. You're good.
Yep. Thank you. I apologize. I'm on the road today in meetings in Orlando, and I've ducked into an empty conference hall in the hotel here. So I'll leave my camera off to save bandwidth because I'm having some connectivity issues. But I'll give an abridged version of what I've been presenting this year. And our community obviously has been impacted greatly since September 28th of last year. Hurricane Ian, I imagine most of you who are on this webinar experienced it, firsthand. But tied for the 5th largest storm on record to make landfall in the United States. It did reach Cat 5 status for a brief amount of time prior to landfall, but did lose some intensity. It made landfall as a Cat 4 storm with maximum sustained winds around 150 miles an hour, roughly in the same location as Hurricane Charlie 18 years prior. It was a very slow-moving storm. For Charlotte County and the rest of Southwest Florida, the primary concern, in addition to the hurricane force winds, was that catastrophic storm surge forecast that we received in the couple days in advance. That was very similar to the storm surge forecast we received for Irma, which did not materialize. Unfortunately, this go around, it did materialize, yet to our south. Next slide, please. So I just want to do a quick comparison between Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Charlie. They were both Cat 4 storms. They both made landfall and on Cape Costa out in our Barrier Island out there in our harbor. That's essentially where those similarities cease. Ian was much larger storm. Its radius of maximum winds extended much further from its eye. Its eye itself was 4 times the size of Hurricane Charlie's. Hurricane Charlie was moving incredibly fast. It traveled between 20 and 25 miles an hour on its path through the state of Florida and actually made its way through the entirety of the peninsula from landfall to the Atlantic Ocean within 8 hours. As I'm sure we can all attest, everyone was battened down, experiencing winds for over 8 hours here in Charlotte County for Hurricane Ian. Rainfall totals 3 to 4 times as much. In fact, Charlotte County had the single highest rainfall total from Ian itself. A rain gauge out in West County and Grove City area had 26.9 inches of rain. This is a much larger storm. Ian was much slower, had the catastrophic storm surge to our south. That very easily could have been us had the track been slightly different. I contrast these two storms to next slide, please, to kind of highlight that no two storms are exactly the same, regardless of what the category is. I mean, category itself simply is referring to the maximum sustained winds. It has nothing to do with storm surge. We want people to ensure this year, especially this year and going forward, that just because we were hit by a major storm and we're still recovering and will be for some time, that doesn't mean that we're done for the foreseeable future. You'll see in some future graphics on my slides that the Gulf Coast of the United States has had some very active seasons over the last 5 to 6 years. Major storms have made landfall, and just because we've experienced Ian and are very familiar with the heavy rainfall and the heavy winds that Charlotte County experienced, that risk of storm surge, which is the primary taker of lives when we talk about tropical weather, could potentially confront us like it did Lee County this past year. Next slide, please. So each and every year, the same steps that we ask, our residents, our businesses, our agencies that make up our county government, city governments, and schools, and so forth. We all want everyone to essentially go through the same steps each and every year, understanding the risk. We highlight on a regular basis the importance of knowing your zone, and that's because those zones directly equate to what threat of storm surge you have. When we call for evacuations, it is primarily, unless you live in a mobile home or barrier island, we're calling for evacuations based on the potential for life-threatening storm surge. It's incredibly important for you to know both your individual homes, your businesses, what evacuation zone they're in, because that's how we are going to communicate to you when life-threatening conditions may be impacting us in Charlotte County. Additionally, knowing the type of home you have, those in mobile homes, I deployed in 2018 to the Panhandle for Hurricane Michael response. Large numbers of mobile homes in that community and those communities up there, many of them severely impacted, even those with the hurricane straps. What they found was, the straps were still in place, the frame of the mobile homes were in place, but the walls, the roof, everything else was gone. We will always evacuate mobile homes for any wind threat, strong tropical storm or above, because they are just not the safest place. Site-built homes, site-built businesses and buildings, those are far more safe than a mobile or manufactured home. Additionally, knowing those special circumstances that your household have, has, whether that's a young child, elderly individual with medical needs. Knowing those things in advance, knowing your level of risk, and if those things might make it more difficult for you to evacuate or even remain in your home if you're not asked to evacuate post landfall of a tropical system. It goes without saying, long-term power outages are just a norm when it comes to tropical weather. It doesn't have to be a cat form storm. Even tropical storms can bring about power outages and utilities, water and wastewater disruptions. That graphic that I mentioned before down there in the center of the screen, that's essentially the 4 or the 6 category 4 or 5 higher category 4 or higher storms that have made landfall on the Gulf Coast. Just living here in Florida, we all should be very cognizant of the fact. And I don't think anyone, especially on this call, because everyone on this call has made the decision to be better prepared for themselves, their businesses, their families. But we all, it's a trade-off of living in paradise. We are vulnerable to tropical weather, and it's not slowing down. Next slide, please. So the next step is making a plan. This is, as straightforward as it sounds. Writing down what you're going to do, what your business is going to do, what your family's going to do, what your household's going to do in the event of a disaster. Making those decisions now, decisions like, how am I preparing my home or business? Where am I going if I have to evacuate? What am I bringing with me? Those are all things that need to be done now, well in advance of any storm that might be bearing down on us. It's the last thing you want to do is be having to make critical decisions without having already thought through some of your options in the face of a storm. Do that now, prepare now, because waiting to the last second is undue stress, and you're likely not to make the best decision for you, your business, your family. Next slide. Next, prepare. I think it goes without saying. We try to hammer home the preparedness aspect each and every year. But having a kit, having a disaster kit, what does that look like for your business? What does that look like for your home? Well, there's a multitude of checklists out there. We have the Charlotte County Disaster Guide that has checklists that are really focused in on households and families. But there's a number of resources that the Florida Division of Emergency Management has specific to businesses. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a checklist, those things that you need to ensure that you've either procured, thought through, or put into place in advance of a storm, so that when the storm is confronting you, you know what you need. We used to say that a household should plan to be on their own for 3 days. So that meant having enough food, water, medication for up to 3 days. Well, those days are gone. The frequency of disasters, the magnitude of disasters has really necessitated us telling people and communicating to the public that, count on being on your own 5 to 7 days. I think everyone on this call who was here on September 28th and the days following knows that when you're being impacted by something to that magnitude, and just think if there was if we were the third storm of the year, the resources are not going to flow in as fast as anybody wants. You have to be able to be on your own 5 to 7 days. So like it's those things I mentioned: food, water, medications. For businesses, obviously you want to ensure that you have the things that will help you reconstitute your business operations. Number of checklists out there, but the Florida Division of Emergency Management, the Virtual Business EOC, they have a number of good resources out there that you can rely on. There are 2 sales tax holidays this year, assuming they're signed into legislation. The first one, May 27th to June 9th. And then the next one towards the height of hurricane season, August 26th through September 8th. Those are opportunities as you're out there building your disaster kits, your disaster supplies, where you can get a tax break on those items. Namely, one of the bigger ticket items are generators. If you're in the market for a generator, my suggestion would be to take advantage of one of those sales tax holidays. All right. And lastly on that slide, I think again, it's evidenced by everyone participating on this call. You take preparedness seriously, both for your families and homes and businesses and the overall community. I think we've all seen it in the days leading up to and since Hurricane Ian. This community has been incredibly resilient. We've had neighbors helping neighbors, and I encourage that. And number of reasons for that. Being a good human being, but secondly, as I mentioned, there's not enough resources in the country to, have a responder knocking on every single door within a couple of days of a storm. Knowing your neighbors, knowing what special circumstances they may have, what vulnerabilities they may help save their lives, honestly. So I encourage that and I appreciate it. Staying informed, that's obviously one of the critical aspects leading up to a storm. We have a number of resources out there that we leverage to get information out to the community. What we found after Ian, maybe we were a little too reliant on the digital network. We leverage social media, our TV stations, our radio stations, and print media, and all the normal things that we can access day to day. But after Ian, I'm sure none of us here had great cell signal. Very few of us could access TV or internet in any reliable way. So we have to get back to basics. During Ian, we printed off thousands of one-sheet pieces of paper, put those in the hands of every responder, road crew, National Guardsman, as they're out in the communities to get the critical information out to the public, whether that's points of distribution so they can get food and water, cooling centers, you name it. We jammed as much information onto those papers as possible, knowing that after a storm, you're not going to have the availability of information you normally do. In addition to that, this year going forward, we're going to leverage our existing county facilities. So specifically our recreation centers and libraries. Those will be places that if you can safely travel there, we will be there with information critical to the community. And as more time elapses past the landfall, we'll be able to add additional resources, food, water, potentially cell towers that will help with connectivity. But those are important. That's an important addition this year. That we want to ensure that everyone in the community knows those are places they can go after a disaster to get the information they need in the days past landfall. And last, stay engaged. It's a long hurricane season, June 1st through November 30th. 6 months of the year, we're potentially we can confront tropical weather, and in reality, you can get tropical weather before and after that as well. Don't let your guard down. Something I didn't think was going to be an issue this year, but as I've been out doing talks and participating in expos, I'm not seeing the turnout that I was anticipating after us all being impacted so heavily from Hurricane Ian. I think that's partially due to individuals and families probably just they know they've been through it. They don't want to go out and be reminded of what they're still recovering from, and some of that just maybe they've got other things to do. Well, I don't want complacency to set in the community. I don't think that's anything anyone wants. So by everyone being on this call and this webinar, I'm sure everyone takes preparedness seriously. My ask of this group is please get the word out for any new residents, any new employees you may have that may be new to the area, or they've been through the storm. Please let them know. Now is not the time to become complacent. We stand the same chance each and every year, regardless of what the experts predict year in, year out, of being impacted by a storm. The prediction this year, if anyone cares, is slightly below average, but last year was, after all the storms were said and done, was basically an exactly average year. And I think we'd all argue that it wasn't average for Charlotte County. So that was sort of the nickel tour of a preparedness talk. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Patrick. We really appreciate you jumping on this call for us. If you have any questions for Patrick, please put them in the chat. If not, we'll give it a couple seconds to see. Our next speaker is going to be Brian Beard with the SBA, and he'll be introduced by Bob White. Waiting just for a moment to see if we have any questions.
Thank you.
All right, looks good. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us, Patrick. If there are any questions that pop up for him, leave them in the chat. We can get a hold of them and get an answer to you later. Thank you again for being here, Patrick. Let's see, we're up for with Bob. He's going to introduce Brian for us. Okay, Summerlin, what's your question? Go ahead and type it. Bob, are you on? I'm not sure if BD. Okay, someone looks like Patrick is off the call, but we will. I will get some information to you, and after the webinar. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take a screen grab of your question. All right, Bob. I don't know if he's on or having connectivity issues, but I'll go ahead and introduce Brian here. So Brian Beard is a public affairs specialist for the Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience. He started working with the SBA in 2017, spending 6 months in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and has worked in several states since then, including spending the last 6 months in Florida, providing outreach to homeowners, businesses, renters, and nonprofit organizations who are affected by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole and by the flooding in Broward County. Prior to the SBA, Brian worked in the field of microfinance development and offered training, technical assistance, and impact assessments to nonprofit organizations providing small loans to poor entrepreneurs in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. Brian, thank you so much for being here. Are you ready for your slides?
Yes, I am. Thanks. Yeah, thank you, Amanda and Kay, for organizing this. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to talk about the SBA disaster loan program. We work alongside FEMA after major disasters that are declared as presidential disasters, such as Ian or Nicole in Northeast Florida, or the recent flooding in Broward County. So the SBA provides loans to not just businesses, but homeowners and renters who have had property damage that is not covered by insurance or other recovery funds. So for homeowners can get up to $200,000 for their primary residence. Renters and homeowners can get up to $40,000 for personal property damage, and businesses and nonprofits can get up to $2 million for their structure, inventory, equipment, machinery, etc. Now, in addition to the physical damage loans for any small businesses, which could include a medium-sized business, the definition is pretty wide, and most nonprofit organizations, if they had a significant drop in sales after a disaster, they can get a working capital loan to cover their monthly expenses that they're not able to cover, such as payroll, utilities, rent, fixed debt payments, etc. It does not matter whether you had physical damage or not. You can get up to $2 million for a combination of physical damage or economic injury. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, in order to be approved for a loan, you have to be eligible. The home, or especially the business, must have a physical presence in the declared county. For the economic injury loans for a drop in sales, that includes counties that are bordering adjacent to or contiguous to the declared counties. So for example, St. John's, Flagler, and Putnam counties were declared for both Ian and Nicole, but businesses in Duval or Bradford or Clay County could also get an economic injury loan because they're in an adjacent county. The applicant must have a credit history that's acceptable to SBA, and you must be able to show your ability to repay the loan, including your other existing debts or obligations. And it doesn't matter if you already have a pre-existing loan with SBA. You could have a COVID loan or a PPP loan or another disaster loan, as long as you're able to show the ability to repay. And that's important. If your loan is declined or withdrawn, you have 6 months from the date of the letter to either appeal the denial or provide additional information and request a reconsideration. So if you happen to get a letter saying you're withdrawn, that just means you're in a suspended status, and that means you still need to supply more information so they can make that decision. Next slide, please. Okay, there are several advantages to getting a disaster loan from the SBA. It's a very low interest rate, which will not change for the life of the loan. It's much cheaper than other forms of debt. For Ian, it was about 3.04% for business loans, and for Nicole, it was 3.3%. It changes every quarter based on the national interest rate. There are no payments and no interest accrued for the first year of the loan for any of the disasters that happened during this fiscal year. And if Congress reapproves that for the next fiscal year, that'll be the same. Previous few years back, it was 5 months of deferment, but recently it's a full year without any interest or payments. And there's no cost to apply, no closing costs, and no prepayment penalty. The loan term can be up to 30 years, depending upon your ability to pay. So that could equate to very low payments. And if you are offered a loan, you have 2 months to decide. There's no obligation to accept it. So we encourage everybody to apply now and decide later. Don't wait for your insurance. There's no collateral on any loans up to $25,000. And even if your insurance is covering most of your damage, you can get a loan just to cover your deductible. And you can also add 20% of the total estimated damage onto that loan to use for mitigation to try to prevent future damage, such as landscaping or a retention wall to prevent future flooding, or a stronger roof, or storm shutters or something to prevent wind damage. And you can also apply before your insurance settlement and start making repairs. With Hurricane Ian, over a fourth of the insurance claims have still not been resolved. So don't wait for your insurance. You can go ahead and get a loan, start making your repairs, and then once the insurance money comes in, that can pay off the loan. Also, if you have a rental property, the home damage loans are only for your primary residence, but if you have a rental property and you're earning rental income and paying taxes on that rental income, you could apply for a business loan to repair any damage to your rental property. So as I mentioned before, we want to encourage everyone to apply now and decide later. Keep your options open. If a lot of people waited for their insurance company, and after not hearing anything, then it was too late to apply. Okay, for homeowners, even though this is primarily for businesses, everybody might have damage to their home. So I wanted to clarify some of these points too, that if you have damage to your home or to your personal property, whether as a homeowner or a renter, you want to make sure to register first with FEMA. This FEMA will make sure your home or your rental is safe and secure to live in, and they could provide rental assistance for 1 or 2 months and possibly longer, and or do basic repairs to make sure your home is safe to live in. Now, it's not insurance, and it's not going to fix or replace everything, but also based on income, you may get referred to the SBA for a loan to cover personal property damage. So you register with FEMA, get a letter saying you've been referred to the SBA for a loan. So it's very important to follow through on that referral. Go ahead and apply for a loan. Even if you don't want a loan, there's no cost to apply. And if that loan application is denied, you may be referred back to FEMA for additional assistance for personal property or other needs. And if you do get a loan offer, you have 2 months to decide. So you could wait and decide not to accept it. And another important point, while registering with FEMA, a lot of people that are especially retirees, if they're just living on Social Security or disability or their savings, they say, well, I'm not working, so I don't have any income, and they put 0 for income, but that is a red flag and causes you to automatically be referred to the SBA so they can determine what your actual income is. Even if you're just living on savings, you have a little bit of interest income. So if you know any elderly people, retired people, make sure they don't put 0 for their income on their registration. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, in order to apply for an SBA disaster loan, you need contact information for all the applicants, and we encourage people to have 2 people as co-applicants, whether husband and wife or 2 people in the family, so that both people will be able to check on the status of their loan. Need an applicant cell phone for verification, Social Security numbers for the applicants, and for the case of a business, you want Social Security numbers and employer identification numbers for all the owners of the business. Financial information, such as how much you have in your bank account, your monthly expenses, so you can determine your ability to repay. Information about your deed or mortgage or your lease. Tax return for the previous year. And if you're doing an economic injury loan, they might ask for 3 years worth of tax returns so they can see what your average income has been and how much it has been affected by the disaster. And also insurance information if that's available. Now, you're not eligible for a loan, federal loan, if you have outstanding federal debts, such as unpaid taxes or child support, or if you haven't kept up your payments on a previous SBA disaster loan. So if that is the case, you want to make sure you're up to date and contact them and get on a payment plan before you apply for your loan, because that'll increase your chances of being accepted. And also there's a requirement, once you get a loan, since you're using taxpayer money, there's a requirement to maintain insurance for that loan. And if you're in a flood zone, or if your damage was from flooding, then there would also be a flood insurance requirement. So you want to make sure to maintain that insurance requirement so you'll be eligible for the next loan if you get hit with another disaster. Okay, there's 3 ways to apply. You can go online to disasterloan.sba.gov. And this, as Amanda said, this webinar will be available, so you have these addresses available to you in the future. You can go to one of the disaster recovery centers and get help in person to apply and check on your status. There was a disaster recovery center in downtown Port Charlotte and another at the Tringali Rec Center over in Englewood that only closed a few weeks ago. You can also request a paper loan application by calling the 800 number, and you can use that 800 number to check on your status as well, or emailing the SBA. And SBA loan officer will review your credit and your repayment ability and make a loan decision. That usually happens within 3 weeks, but could be longer if there's a really major disaster. And they'll discuss that decision with you. The loan amount will be based on your ability to repay and the amount of estimated damage from the inspection, but you can accept a lower amount. You don't have to accept the amount that's offered to you. And once all the loan documents are executed and signed, then the disbursement usually happens in 3 to 5 days. For loans that are over 25,000, you usually get a first disbursement of 25,000, and then you provide receipts showing that you've spent 80% of that amount for the next disbursement. Okay, next slide. Okay, and I'm not going to go into this in detail because Dorian will be speaking about all the great services and technical assistance that the SBDC provides. But I encourage all business owners to take advantage of all these resources available from our resource partners. Patty Gerso does a great job in Charlotte County by helping small business owners. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then here's just our general SBA address, sba.gov/disaster, to learn more details about the disaster programs, or you can contact our customer service center at 800-659-2955 or send an email to that address there. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer questions at the end of all the presentations.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian, for that. Yeah, if you have any questions for Brian, just put them in the chat and we'll do that at the end. Our next speaker is going to be Deborah Parker from FEMA, and I have Doug Izzo is going to do her introduction.
Deborah Parker is the task force leader, floodplain management and insurance with FEMA. She joined FEMA over a decade ago and is enthusiastic about helping to increase educational awareness for local, state, federal, tribal, and community stakeholders throughout the state. Deborah leads a team of subject matter insurance experts that are currently supporting several survivor awareness events. They provide technical and disaster-specific guidance in an effort to increase awareness, understanding, and enhances flood insurance knowledge in conjunction with the National Flood Insurance Program. They conduct local training, presentations and webinars, outreach opportunities, and participate in community speaking events. Prior to joining FEMA, Deborah worked decades in the insurance industry as a licensed all lines and multi-peril insurance claims adjuster, with responsibilities of investigating, mediating, estimating, inspecting, and inspecting. Deborah is the recipient of 2 distinguished National FEMA Administrator Awards, one in 2015 for contribution in development of the Office of Flood Insurance Advocate, and in 2016 for Louisiana Customer-Centric Claims Payout. So welcome, Deborah.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I want to go ahead and just introduce myself and let you know that I provided some information here on the slides that I'd like to share with you, which are a few videos. And then what I will do is go ahead and chat with you for just a moment and give you some detailed information. Can you go ahead and play those videos, please?
Absolutely. One moment, I think I need to turn my computer audio back on.
This is one of our slides on protect the life you've built.
Okay.
Rainwater fast enough.
Are you able to hear that?
Drizzle to heavy storms, and if the soil can't absorb rainwater fast enough, or storm drains can't handle it, rain can lead to devastating flash floods. Just an inch of water in your home or business can cost you thousands of dollars in damages that homeowners and renters insurance don't cover. But flood insurance can protect you from financial devastation, giving you peace of mind, no matter what's in the forecast. Call your insurance agent or learn more at floodsmart.gov.
Was everybody able to hear the audio on these?
Accelerated.
Living in Florida, we've experienced our own fair share of hurricanes, but never flood. That changed when Hurricane Matthew hit. It's flooded with almost 2 feet of water, damaging the kitchen, bathrooms, floors, electric. So now we're rebuilding our home from the ground up. We raised the level of our floor 4 feet where we used to be. We've had flood insurance ever since we moved here. Never ever dreamed we would ever use it. If it wasn't for this flood insurance, we would be in dire straits. We've got just an endless library of memories with the kids, and we look forward to many, many more years in this home.
PM, the storm started. Water started coming up out of the creek. Within, I want to say 5-7 minutes, was already up to our back door. The one thing I learned the hard way is I have regular business insurance and then I have flood insurance. As soon as it becomes a flood issue, flood insurance is the only thing that can save you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our FEMA.
March of 2019 was a pretty big event. We had a lot of snow. We had a lot of deep freeze.
Okay, it looks like we're having some sound issues based on the chat, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to our presentation. Deborah, if you want to go ahead and get started again. All of those videos will be available. You get an email with the presentation. We'll have all those videos available in these flyers as well.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'll go ahead and take it from here if you don't mind. I just want everyone to know that flooding is the most common and costly natural disaster in America. And after a flood, of course, the process of recovering can be quite inundating for all of us. Whether you're a business, a private individual that owns their property, or a condo owner, or just someone that is a renter in that capacity, water damage can be quite extensive. And the photos and the slides that we just showed you is an indication of what could actually happen. One of the slides was an actual individual's property or home, and the other was a business that recovered from flood. Once you understand what you need to do before a flood, during a flood, or after an event, that helps to better prepare you for tomorrow. So one of the things that you need to do is before the flooding event occurs or any type of catastrophic event occurs, if you have an insurance policy, you should definitely annually check your coverage and limits to make sure that you're amply covered for any type of disaster. Now, what you want to do is make sure that you keep copies of any records, birth certificates, or any of your personal belongings or financial items in a safe place. They can either be stored in something like a Ziploc bag. You can store them in a place that is not located at the property that perhaps would have an event of flooding, or you can have them secure them in like a Ziploc bag or something to take them with you. One of the things that you want to make sure you do is take a photo of all of your personal belongings as well as your home or property or business, so you can have that information available when filing your claim. In doing so, you may want to take those items and save them on a thumb drive or email that information to yourself or one of your family members that is not going to be in an affected area that may be affected by a storm or an event. This way you can secure those documents. Now, if you find that you have a flood insurance policy, those documents will be very important for you when filing your claim. So in preparations and steps for after the storm has occurred, you want to make sure that you gather those documents together for your adjuster to see and have a list of all the items that you've replaced, repaired along the way, or that has been damaged. So in doing so, if you have the National Flood Insurance Policy, our company with FEMA immediately sends to you what we call a claims handbook. That claims handbook will provide you with guidance on how to file a claim and what documents you will need in preparation for the visits from the adjuster. In addition to that, you want to know your risk. So going out to our MAP Service Center under msc.fema.gov/portal/search, you can enter information in there about your location of your home, location where you work, location as to where you would have to travel to get from work or wherever you may be located, to make sure that you're not in an area that could be inundated by flooding. So what's important here is before the disaster, you want to prepare, which has already been mentioned to you, the preparations by the Charlotte County Emergency Management as well as SBA. I won't go into those in detail. But during the event, I want to make sure that you understand that Region 4 is here for you and that FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program, we're standing by after any event to assist you and your community to work to help to recover from any type of event. We do have 800 numbers that are available for you with the National Flood Insurance Program for filing your claim, as well as if you have any policy questions. I provided you with a copy of a list of important websites. It's a printable document that we can share with you later that will provide you with resources on general information on the National Flood Insurance, what to do before and during a flood, filing your claim, recovering from a flood. We also have information there for your insurance agent. If an event occurs, you want to make sure that you're in contact with your insurance agent and or insurance company to find out the procedures for filing your claim. We also provided you with information on what to do after other events such as fires or snow melts. So I think that's pretty much all the information I want to share with you. There are some things you can do to protect your property, like you can elevate it. You can take your appliances and move them by elevating them to a higher level in your home or on the outside of the home. You can also elevate them. You can move your furniture. Like, for instance, if you live in a 2-story home and you know your property is prone to flooding, you can take that property and move it up to the attic area. your personal belongings, as well as any furniture on the second level or higher. I think that's pretty much all that I have to share with you today. I did provide that document that you're showing on the screen right now that has all of the website information and that you should need to protect you in case of an event.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Like I said before, the entire presentation from today's webinar will be on our website, and we'll share it on our social media. So if you found the webinar, you'll be able to find the slides. All right, so our next speaker is going to be Dorian. Bob White was going to introduce him, but he's having some audio issues. So my co-host Kay is going to do the introduction.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dorian is the Regional Director for the Small Business Development Center at Florida Gulf Coast University, where he and his team serve the small business community of Charlotte, Lee County, Collier County, Henry County, and Glades County. Prior to his role, Dorian served as an associate director at the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, at the University of West Florida in Pensacola. We will not hold that against him. Dorian has 10 years of experience as a small business consultants specializing in financial loan packaging and financial statement analysis. He also is an expert in small business development, small business disaster recovery, assisting businesses affected by natural disasters such as hurricanes Michael, Sally, and the COVID pandemic, as well as Ian recently. He has an MBA with a business analytics certificate and a BSBA from the University of West Florida. He holds the Economic Development Finance Professional Certification from the National Development Council and the certificate Business Continuity Professional Certification from the Disaster Recovery Institute International. Welcome, Dorian.
Hey, thanks. Can you guys hear me well?
Yep, we can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so Southwest Florida has been home for about 10 or 11 months now. Lived in the Panhandle for the past 12 years, and like Kay mentioned, it really was a baptism by fire for our region with disaster recovery in the SBDC network. From floods, tornadoes, we really were kind of the premier disaster recovery experts across our network. So who we are, the SBDC network is a federally funded program. We're generally associated with institutions of higher education. Usually this is a university environment. Sometimes it's a state college environment. We have 9 regions in our Florida state network, about 200 or so, maybe 250 consultants across the state. And our region, Southwest Florida, has 20 small business consultants. So we are state designated as Florida's principal provider of small business assistance. Next slide, please. So who we help officially, the cap is any small business with 500 or less employees. Generally speaking, when you think of small business, you probably think of much less than 500 employees. But our target markets are going to be what we call SMEs, the small and medium enterprises. These are businesses who have been in business for more than 3 years, generally have employees. That's our bread and butter and our main focus. We also help startups. So these are businesses who just started yesterday or have started their business in the past 3 years. I like to say it's the business owner who's experiencing a lot of firsts, kind of thinking like, your first kiss in school or middle school or whatever. Our startup clients are, hey, Dorian, I'm starting my business for the first time. I'm hiring my first employee. I'm signing my first lease, signing my first contract. So we also help those clients. And then, of course, a little bit pre-venture clients, maybe 10% of our work effort is dedicated to these individuals. And this is going to be individuals who just come in and say, I have a light bulb moment. I want to start my business based on your professional experience. Is this feasible or not? Next slide. So what we do, we provide technical assistance to small businesses. And one of the reasons when I mentioned that we're state designated as Florida's principal provider of small business assistance, The reason why the state of Florida designated our organization is because we are at no cost. I can't say free because taxpayer dollars pay for the services we provide, but we're no cost. We're confidential, and we provide that professional, unbiased third-party point of view. So none of our employees or members on our staff, you can't pay us. You can't give us equity in your company. As seen on this slide, the main consulting services that we provide is helping people create and critique business plans, helping you grow your marketing or grow your sales through effective marketing, cash flow management and financial management, government contracting, whether it's local, state, or federal, access to capital and loan packaging. We're just rebuilding our international trade department here in our region, and then disaster recovery. Next slide. So with disaster recovery, training workshops before and after a disaster, we have webinars and in-person workshops. So before a disaster, it's more focused on disaster planning, such as this webinar right now. Afterwards, it's basically helping the SBA and the federal government explain the different loan programs, the programs out there, and then also representing a special state of Florida specific loan. Florida's one of the maybe 6 states that has an emergency bridge loan program for small businesses. So it's a really great program that our state has, and I think it separates our state leadership from other states. We also provide consulting services with disaster recovery. So those services I mentioned before, honestly, we always encourage our clients to have a recurring relationship with their SBDC consultant throughout the year. Oh, can you go back real quick? And then the Business Recovery Center. So our state network, we spent something like $800,000 on these 2 mobile assistance centers. These are the RV pictured here. So in tight spots or when we need to deploy to a disaster area, we have these RVs where, as you can see in the image, we have some of my consultants helping people fill out loan paperwork, and also an SBA representative there. We also have maybe 6 mini Macs. They're not the RVs, but they're little tiny vans that we could deploy in even harder to reach places or smaller rural areas. So we help with that. And outside of the SBA loans, we also help with that emergency bridge loan. Next slide. And then to work with us, I encourage everyone to work with us and meet with the SBDC, ideally on a blue sky day when there is no hurricane and no disaster, form that relationship now. But, it costs nothing to use us. If you want any more information on the workshops we have or the services we have, feel free to visit our website.
Great, thank you so much, Dorian. If you have any questions for Dorian, please leave them in the chat. I know we're getting close to 1 p.m. We do have a couple more speakers. If you can't stay, a recording of this webinar will be available. Later, it'll be on our social media and our YouTube, and you can always email me with any questions you have. I put my email address in the chat. Our next speaker is going to be Liz Scott with CareerSource Southwest Florida. She is a business services account executive at CareerSource Southwest Florida. Liz is a workforce and economic development professional with over 10 years of experience. Her vast knowledge in recruiting, interviewing, staff development, performance appraisals, and succession planning has enabled her to excel in this profession. She earned her bachelor's degree in business administration at Miami-Dade College and started her career as an employer specialist at South Florida Workforce Investment Board. She's held a variety of roles throughout her career in workforce development industry, overseeing career development professionals who work directly for Florida employers to procure, develop, and retain quality employees. Additionally, as a consultant for the state of South Carolina's workforce system, she helped improve customer engagement and satisfaction. She holds the following certifications: WIOA and WIOA program, State of Florida Workforce Professional Tiers 1, 2, and 3, and Ticket to Work Coordinator. As a military spouse, she is also certified by the U.S. Department of Defense as a Defense Suicide Prevention Specialist. In her current role, she provides a broad range of business development services, fulfilling the Southwest Florida Workforce Development Board's mission by coordinating business development activities such as job development and placement, on-the-job training, internships, along with other employment and training programs. Liz's journey to excellence has been fueled with an unrelenting passion for serving and empowering others to achieve their dream careers. Thank you so much for being here, Liz.
Thank you, Amanda, for the intro. And I just wanted to make sure that my audio is working because I was having issues earlier.
It is. I can hear you great.
Perfect. Thank you. So for you that are not familiar with CareerSource, we are a nonprofit agency. We're the direct service provider for different workforce programs that are fully supported by the U.S. Department of Labor. In other words, other services are completely no cost to employers and job seekers. During a state of emergency, we're committed to supporting business owners in the affected areas and helping Floridians get back to work. So I would like to mention or discuss a few programs that we have after a major hurricane or disaster. If you can put the next, there you go. So the first one that I would like to discuss will be the National Dislocated Workers Grant, and we're actually working under this grant after Hurricane Ian. This one is available only to nonprofits or government entities where they can be utilized as disaster relief worksite partners to help create jobs to provide humanitarian assistance and cleanup and restoration following a declared disaster or emergency event. Workers that we bring under this grant will be hired and paid for up to a year or 2,080 hours under the grant. We also have that is always available on the job training. This is open to any business owner, and it basically matches businesses with qualified job seekers who are eager to work but need the specialized training only an employer can provide. We here at CareerSource will reimburse the employer up to $7,000 per new hire if there's any skill gap between the job description and the employer experience. Besides on the job training, we have the work experience. This one, again, is open to everybody, and is when it comes to the job seeker, this person would have to be between 18 and 24 years old, which is considered a young adult. In a business, we're going to be placing these young adults in a business with assigned work duties. CareerSource will pay 100% for their wages for up to $7,200 per hire. And our workers' compensation, the workers' compensation will be on us as well. So, and in other words, if you're planning to bring somebody between 18 and 24 and they're unemployed, they could be on our payroll, our workers' comp for up to $7,200. We also have the disaster unemployment assistance. And yes, this is also available to businesses. Is to help businesses and residents whose employment or self-employment was lost or interrupted as a result of the recent storm or hurricane. We also have, and again, we have been using this one a lot after Ian, the Rapid Response Program, which is a proactive business-focused program designed to assist companies and their employees facing potential layoff or closures. Our team provides early intervention assistance to prevent potential layoff and immediate on-site services to assist workers that are facing job losses. So we try to work with them one-on-one, try to find them something right after they get, they laid off, just so they don't have a gap on unemployment and wages. Now, if for whatever reason you have to completely shut down or work for a period of time, and you do have employees that don't have a job, we can offer them the chance to assist with rebuilding the community by placing them in post-disaster related jobs or any other regular job depending on their background. We're Region 24, so we're not only serving Charlotte, but we also work in Collier, Glaze, Henry, and Lee. And I'm also citing all our different offices. We have 6 different locations throughout the Region 24.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. We really appreciate that. If you have any questions for Liz, you can put her question in the chat. And our last but not least, our next speaker is going to be Angie Matheson, and my co-host Kay is going to do our introduction.
It is my privilege to introduce Angie Matheson. Angie has joined the United Way of Charlotte County in 2014. She obtained her Master's of Social Work from the University of Georgia in 1994, and her Bachelor's of Psychology from Georgia State University in 1990. Prior to joining the United Way, she worked for at the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta for 15 years, leading the Immunize Georgia program, as well as several statewide school health initiatives. In 2012, she edited the statewide school health resource manual, a 600-page resource for every school in Georgia. Prior to that, she worked as a pediatric oncology social worker at Aflac Cancer Center for 5 years. And before that, she worked in the inner city of Atlanta at Grady Hospital with adolescent mothers through the Healthy Families Program. Angie has been actively involved in Charlotte County, including participating in Leadership Charlotte class of 2014, where she served as vice president of the class. She is a Florida native and resides in Punta Gorda with her husband, Britt, and daughter, Leah. Welcome, Angie.
Okay, I think that might be better. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I'm going to keep it really brief, you guys. I want to let you know that you guys have people potentially working in Charlotte County, and I want to let you know of ways that they can get help. And so a little bit about United Way, just briefly, our mission, mobilizing the power of our community to break the cycle of poverty. And then next slide, please. A little bit, we navigate, mobilize, and fund. So there's various ways that we help our local community. We are not focused on anything outside of Charlotte County. A large myth, many people think we're part of the big United Way network, but we are solely here to serve Charlotte County. So we do that through a variety of ways. I'm not going to get into these details, but just so you can see that. And the next slide, please. This United at Work program began after the hurricane as a result of obviously the hurricane, but we know that people that are working in Charlotte County struggle, many working multiple jobs, and for our mission we wanted to really make sure that we were being a resource and support for that. We had a donor come through right after the storm and say they wanted to come alongside us. We created the United at Work Fund, which right now is still helping people in Charlotte County who work that were affected by the storm. Next slide, please. Truly, all of our employees are essential to our community, and keeping our workforce going is really our life and blood. And I know every one of you can agree with that. And so next slide, please. Since the hurricane, or since November, we've been able to help 460 households with our United at Way program. This is representing 128 businesses in Charlotte County, and thus far we've been able to give out $563,000, and that fund, total fund was $1.3 million. So we've really only given out half of what we have available to us. And the way that I would really explain this is, if your business has employees that are still struggling, please consider making sure that they know about this resource. It's a super easy way, but if there are still complicated situations, we then refer to the larger network of case management options available to assist with long-term recovery. So we've wanted to be that stopgap for workers and found that were ways to really help with simple things. And so there are vulnerable folks, and we want to make sure that if another storm occurs, that they're not left even more vulnerable, that they're resilient in getting into the summer and ahead of anything else that might come up. So next slide, please. And just a few notes about the program. Again, it's really designed for employees of Charlotte County businesses, and if the business is outside of Charlotte County, but the person works in Charlotte County, that also still applies. And we have a very simple system for getting them connected with our case manager. Definitely rent, mortgage, utilities, those types of things have gotten behind because of paying for other things. And so this is an area where we've been able to help. And then I think the next slide is how, because I know that's a big question. So how do you get help, or how do you refer one of your employees? What you can do is go to this website. This will also be included in the packet following the meeting. And then you can email that link. There are handouts, flyers with QR codes that you can also print and hang in your break rooms and whatnot. Give them to your department heads and get the word out, because we still have funds available. I think that's it. And a variety of other ways that we help, but really wanted to make sure that the folks attending this today were aware of how they could get help with for their employees.
Great. Thank you so much, Angie. That's been a great program for our Charlotte County employees and businesses. Okay, so there's Angie's contact information. Okay, does anybody have any questions? I know earlier Summerlin had asked about better ways of communication after a storm, and there were some great suggestions in the chat from Angie and I believe his name was Eric for Starlink and Lightspeed IP. So those are two really good systems that we have people who have used them and really, really like them. So because I know that was a big problem after Hurricane Ian. I want to say thank you so much to all of our presenters for taking time out of your day to help us support our small business community with this webinar. We know you're really busy and you have a lot of things on your plate, so we really, really appreciate that you could share your knowledge and information with our businesses. Again, please feel free to reach out with any information. Our website is right there, clearedfortakeoff.com. You can find our phone number, email addresses. If you have any questions about preparing for hurricane season, just let us know. With that, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you again for being here. Thank you to our presenters, to our co-hosts, and reach out with any questions. Thank you so much.